time for one more race in the Ginetta Junior Championship for 2025. The championship may have been settled yesterday, but the teenagers have one more opportunity to put on a show for this Donington Park crowd at the final event of what has been a hugely competitive season in Britain's leading junior championship. Yes, the title went the way of Rocco Coronel with 2 races to spare, but if the race earlier on this morning is anything to go by, I don't think we're in for a quiet and uneventful conclusion to the championship, even though there isn't that much in the way of points calculations still to be done. That being said, there are still a couple of minor places up for grabs. There's a real scrap between our racing teammates for 3rd in the championship in this one, as Max Cuthbert and Scott Lindblom both attempt to overhaul the absent Alfie Slater, another of their R Racing teammates, into 3rd place in the championship standing. So that's a little subplot to keep an eye on over the next 20 minutes. And even regardless of that, the racing here at Donington this weekend has been sensational across both of the races so far. Yesterday, Max Cuthbert got his first victory in the championship, and that was a big step forwards as he tried to, as I said, move into 3rd place in the standings by the end of the year, whilst Fred Green, who is now confirmed as the runner-up in the Ginetta Junior Championship this year, managed to get back to winning ways again earlier on today, claiming his 8th victory in what has got to be one of the most successful debut campaigns, or campaigns in general, for the Ginetta Scholarship winner over recent years. 8 wins, 17 podiums now that Fred Green has picked up, and he starts this 3rd race as a result of that win from pole position. So Fred Green looking to try and sign off in style. He can't win the championship anymore. He is 27 points adrift of Rocco Coronel at the moment. Rocco deciding not to race in the final couple of races of the season, but because of dropped scores and the like, even though there are 36 points still up for grabs, Rocco would score back the 14 that he's currently dropping, and that would be enough still for him to win the championship. So Rocco, in the end, his final championship winning margin is going to end up being an awful lot smaller than it should be, really, because there's a very high likelihood that Fred Green will end up on the podium, at least you'd say, in this race, and it may well be down to single digits, that winning margin for Rocco Coronel, but he's dominated through most of the season and therefore is a deserving champion. Fred Green then starts from pole alongside Aussie driver Jarrett Clark, winner yesterday. Scott Lindblom and Colin Cronin are next, both of whom are looking for their first race victories. Then Harry Bartle and Lewis Goff together on row number 3. Josh Watson, George Proudfoot-Nalder make up the 4th row of the grid. George still trying to bounce back after the disaster from yesterday. Torrin Byrne and Max Cuthbert complete the top 10. Then Josh Henry with Revy Lake alongside him on the 6th row of the grid. Row 7 for Henry Cameron and Matthew Chiwara, with Ethan Carney and Andrew Robinson together on row number 8. Newcomers, Vladislav Tomanchuk and Jesse Phillips are together on row 9, completing their debut weekend in the championship with Noah Young at the back of the grid. I realise I did just say Jarrett Clark was a winner yesterday. Of course he wasn't. I'm not for the first time getting my R Racing drivers mixed up. It was the number 34 car in your screen there, Max Cuthbert, who claimed his first victory in race number 1 yesterday. Jarrett Clark yet to score a podium finish and starts from the outside of row 1 this time, so he'll be particularly hungry to try and put that right in this race. The final opportunity for those who are chasing a maiden podium, a maiden race win, to be able to do so before the end of the year. Fred Green, though, he is the winningest driver on track. He will not be able to beat Rocco Coronel's 11 wins, but if he can win this one, it would be 9 race victories over the course of the year. And, OK, a couple of those would have taken place in races that Rocco Coronel wasn't in, but he did beat Rocco fair and square in all 3 races at Croft last time out, and also in the races that Fred Green won in the middle of the season. He had a win at Donington Park, he had a win at Snetterton, and another 2 wins at Brands Hatch as we went into the final 3rd of the season. The Ginetta G56 safety car pulls out of the way, or pace car, I suppose, as it is at this stage. There's the number 4 car. Now, that car, I think, is one to watch, that of Lewis Goff. It has been a part-season campaign for Lewis Goff. He only came into the championship, I think it was at Brands Hatch, wasn't it, that he debuted? Yes, I think it was at Brands Hatch, and was immediately on the pace and starts this race from 6th on the grid, yet to finish on the podium. And indeed, 4 of the top 7 drivers on this grid have yet to finish on the podium. So I think there's a very good chance that we will get a few new names added to that particular list. And Lewis Goff may well be one of the favourites to achieve that. So too, I'm sure, is Jarrett Clark, though. The grey and blue R racing car on the outside of row 1. It's Elite Motorsports Fred Green, though, that has the pole position. And we'll be looking towards those starting lights in anticipation of a race start, which is moments away. The final race of the season in the Ginetta Junior Championship bursts into life. There's a staller, and thankfully everyone has missed them. That was George Proudfoot-Nalder, who's just, his weekend has just absolutely slipped away from him, hasn't it? From, what, 2 corners from home in yesterday's first race, and he will now get underway right at the back of the field. It's a remarkably orderly run through the first corner, and a big lead for Fred Green already. He has got some real confidence on coal tires. Look at the gap that he's pulled over Jarrett Clark and Scott Lindblom. That's the biggest lead anyone's had today so far, certainly in the Ginetta Juniors. Of course, yesterday, Proudfoot-Nalder hit the front early on and simply disappeared up the road as well. I wonder whether Fred Green might be able to do the same thing. The next 2 cars, though, Jarrett Clark and Scott Lindblom, are teammates, and we've seen sometimes more successfully than other times, but we have seen occasionally our racing teammates work together, and I'm sure they will, in the early stages, try to limit the gap that Fred Green's able to pull. They'll still pick up a slipstream down that back straight. I'm sure there's a squeeze there from Torrin Byrne against Max Cuthbert, but Cuthbert will still come through. Max Cuthbert's weekend also unravelling slightly after the highs of the win yesterday. Only 10th in the race earlier on today after a spin, if memory serves, but picking his way nicely through the order already. It's a 6-car lead breakaway, though, as they arrive at the chicane for the first time. So Green, Clark, Lindblom, Cronin, Bartle and Lewis Goff all together, and then you've got a much improved Josh Watts coming next. Through the gravel goes the number 6 of Andrew Robinson, rejoined directly in front of the 95 car on the exit of the corner, that of Noah Young, and didn't really lose too much time as a result. Right on board then with the 3rd place man, and Scott Lindblom with a grandstand view of the leading 2 who have close together. George Proudfoot-Nalder getting involved with Andrew Robinson. That's Robinson's 2nd off-track excursion in as many corners. George Proudfoot-Nalder, I think, is out of the race, and I'll be quite honest with you, he deserved better than what this weekend has delivered him after that dominant performance yesterday, to be robbed of the win and then just can't seem to find any good fortune today. Even if he carries on, he's going to be so far back with a damaged car that surely is his chance of a race victory well and truly gone. The leaders, though, all still very much in contention, make their way through Redgate Corner. Here's a replay of what happened. It's in the back of shot. George is up the inside, trying to recover from the bad start. Oh, and in fairness, he seemed to carry a bit too much speed into the corner, didn't he? Got on the curb, got sideways and clattered into the cars to his outside. So a little bit of frustration maybe creeping in there for George. Leaders then drop down through the old hairpin, and Lewis Goff now starts to try and put the moves on Harry Bartle. Goff sort of arrived on the tail end of that lead group, right in the closing stages in race 2. Gained a bit of ground, but didn't quite have enough time to get right to the front. Well, this time he has got away with the leaders immediately, and will be looking to try and pick his way up this leading order as quickly as possible. But the closer to the front you get, the harder the overtakes become. Fred Green certainly proved that earlier on today. He was stoic in his defence of the race lead, impossible to find a way past for any length of time. Jarrett Clark is now the man faced with trying to find a way through, but it's all very civilised for now, isn't it? Look, no defensive driving from Fred into the chicane. And Jarrett Clark, in fairness, wasn't really forcing anything defensive out of him. We're getting a safety car period. So the safety car is out. This must be because of George Proudfoot-Nalder's car, I'm guessing. Possibly has been abandoned in a dangerous position down at the Melbourne hairpin. I can't see anybody else who is off the road on the tracker. There is the reason then, I suspect, for the safety car. And the marshals now rush out to assist George in getting that car out of the way. So race will be paused. That's a shame, because it's going to take a couple of laps now probably to get the race back underway. He's a long way off the road, but almost question why he didn't just go down the access road that is used to get out of the assembly area and into the racetrack. When we're on the Grand Prix layout, the assembly area is down at that area of the paddock, just to the left of this camera, and they use that access road in front of us to get onto the circuit. George Proudfoot-Nalder, though, has sort of just come to a halt on the grass, and that's deemed a dangerous enough position to warrant a safety car. So Fred Green leads after 2 laps of racing then. It is Jarrett Clark second, as I said, hunting that first podium. Scott Lindblom hunting a first win, his third. Colin Cronin is in fourth, ahead of Lewis Goff, who got ahead of Harry Bardle just before the safety car came out. Cuthbert 7th, Josh Watts is 8th, 9th Torrin Byrne, and Revy Lake in 10th. There's a JCB there ready to snatch that 25 car out of the way. It's parked at a slightly awkward angle though, isn't it? And the damage to the rear of the car might mean that they have to use the front tow hook, and not that easy to access that with the big JCB. Once they do get it hooked up though, it shouldn't take too long to get it out of harm's way, because they can then just drag it down into the access road that I was describing. There's Andrew Robinson, with whom George Proudfoot-Nalder got involved at the hairpin. Slots in behind Vladislav Tomenchuk, another one of the pace performance drivers, one of the 2 drivers making their debut this weekend. And although the grid numbers have shrunk, as often happens at the end of the year, as some drivers drop out of contention and start looking at what they're going to move into next year, it also is bolstered by drivers looking to come and do this next year. And if you are interested in getting out on track and doing some junior racing, you could do an awful lot worse than getting in touch with Ginetta. They offer some very competitive packages. There are some very professional teams who are able to run you, and often professional drivers brought in to coach the youngsters as well. And if you are interested in getting into junior motor racing, if you're a karter looking to move forward into car racing, the Ginetta Junior Championship continues to be the place to go, really. It is a championship which, in many ways, and I've made this comparison a few times before, so forgive me if you've heard me waffle on about this in the past, but it's sort of the sports car equivalent of what the Formula Ford 1600 Championship used to be back in the day. These are low-powered, not very aerodynamic, not very grippy cars. They don't yield a lot of mechanical grip, no aerodynamic grip really, but because of that, they are a perfect place to make that transition from karting into car racing. They teach you all about car control, all about racecraft, obviously, because of how close the racing is. And there's a reason that it has really become the most popular junior championship out there, and the grid numbers swelling again this year as this ongoing relationship with Ginetta and SRO continues to blossom, as the Ginetta Championships moved over onto the British GT package a few years ago. So the Ginetta Junior Championship, which is very much a multinational championship now, isn't it? A huge amount of different nationalities represented on this grid, which again is sort of reminiscent of what Formula Ford used to be back in the day. In fact, I had a very interesting conversation off mic earlier on today regarding the decision of the Coronels to come and race here, and Tom Coronel to bring his son Rocco over to race in Ginetta Juniors. It's because he said, Tom said, when he was a teenager or a youngster and wanting to make a name for himself, the place to come was the UK. But back then it was to race in Formula Fords, whereas now very much the Ginetta Junior Championship sort of taking that place. A disconsolate George Proudfoot-Nalder trudges back to the paddock. It's a short walk back, at least. He could have been stranded a lot further away than the Melbourne hairpin, but that will be a very little solace for the young Aussie driver, who, as I said, deserved to get a better result this weekend, but a non-finish in 2 of the races. 8th place, though, in the second race, and that was a little bit better, but just, again, never was quite able to get right to the front and fight for a race win. Having done everything right yesterday, he'll be sure trying to keep his spirits up and look towards next year. If he does come back and do this again next year, have to say he could be a championship contender, although this season it's been all about the rookies, hasn't it? All of the championship contenders really have been drivers in their first season of racing in the Ginetta Junior Championship, and for most of them, if not all of them, their first ever season of car racing, and immediately taking the fight to, and indeed beating, some of the slightly more seasoned racers. Right, the pack is bunching up, which tells me that the lights are probably out on the safety car, and I think we are good to go racing. 11 minutes left on the clock, and Fred Green now in control of the pack as the safety car heads for the pit lane, and he has got Jarrett Clark absolutely glued to his rear bumper. Look at that, Jarrett not weaving around, not taking any chances, not letting Fred Green steal a march on him. Just listening and see when Fred decides to accelerate. Waiting quite a long time, isn't he? Going to go a bit later maybe than we've seen in previous races. Jarrett Clark getting an itchy right foot, wants to jump on the accelerator. When does Fred get the race back underway? Going to wait really late, waiting just until they turn into the Goddard's hairpin, maybe. On board with Lindblom here in third. Still they're bunched together. Now they accelerate, so a very late restart there from Fred Green, trying to keep everybody else behind bunched together. It's an okay restart. Jarrett Clark is certainly under more pressure than the race leader is, but not a massive jump there, just under half a second the lead margin, and that will already have come down with the slipstream down the main straight. So single file through Redgate Corner. And off down the Craner curves they will go. This the 5th lap of the race. We're just inside the second half of it. And after that brief safety car interlude, the stage is set, I think, here for a really intriguing battle. You've got 2 elite motorsport cars sandwiching the 2R racing cars at the front of the field, and then Lewis Goff for Project R is sort of the outlier in 5th position. There goes Matthew Chihuahua in his Tim Gray Motorsport prepared car. Matthew's been making some improvements in performance, I'd say, over the last couple of rounds as well. And runs at the moment in 15th place. Leaders as one, though, head around the right-hander at McLean's, up the hill towards Coppice. It's already a blind corner. It's even more blind when you're this close behind the car in front of you. You genuinely can't see the apex until you've already fully committed to it. And if you get it wrong, you will lose speed not only through the turn, but all the way down this exhibition straight, where the slipstream is bringing Jarrett Clark onto the tail of Fred Green, but again, he's not really asking any serious questions of Fred right now. Fred Green then continues to lead the way, Clark second, and Scott Lindblom there in third. Lindblom came into this race 11 points behind Alfie Slater, who is third in the championship but not racing, and 7 points behind Max Cuthbert, while Cuthbert is 7th in the race. So if Lindblom could make some more progress, I think Scott could end up with that 3rd position in the championship, making it 2 of the Red Bull rookie drivers inside the top 3 in the driver's standings. But really what Scott wants is a race victory. He's yet to win this year, and he knows that this is a good opportunity to make that happen. Out of the hairpin, 2nd gear, up to 3rd. He's waving furiously at Colin Cronin behind him to say, don't overtake me, work with me. But Colin isn't really close enough to overtake anyway as we head into Redgate Corner. Max Cuthbert is, though. Look behind. Oh, and gets into the back of Harry Bartle. Just slightly misjudged that move to the inside line. Wanted to jink to the inside of the last second and didn't quite time it right. Now he goes through. I wonder whether that might be looked at after the race, possibly. Harry Bartle, I'm sure, would not have appreciated that little tap in the tail. Well, quite a big tap in the tail, really. Josh Watts, I think, has had contact with somebody as well, because the front bodywork on the 22 car is hanging loose. We saw that from a number of drivers in the race earlier on today. It limits visibility. It doesn't really help with aerodynamics either. And that might now count Josh Watts out of a reasonable result. Cuthbert still under pressure from Harry Bartle, who in fairness hasn't retaliated in kind, has he? He's very close to Max Cuthbert, but no contact made between the two of them. It's all very, very calm, though, in that leading group. It's got a bit of a pressure cooker feel, this race. You feel like the lid will eventually blow off it at some point. In the midfield, it's far less tame, and that is Revy Late being squeezed wide by Josh Watts at Coppice, and Revy will lose 1, 2, maybe 3 positions now on the run down the exhibition straight. Yeah, 2 positions at least that will cost Revy. Got Ethan Carney there just ahead of Josh Watts. This is all going on just at the back of the top 10. Carney, the white-fronted number 53 car, wasn't white-fronted at the start of the weekend, is in 9th position. And behind, it's all starting to get very, very interesting indeed. Josh Henry there defends the inside, and that's the 26 car of Jesse Phillips, newcomer this weekend, trying to find a way through into what would be a very impressive 11th position, knocking on the door of a top 10 in only the 3rd race in the championship for Jesse. Then immediately, as so often is the case in Ginetta Juniors, switches within 2 corners from attack to defence and tries to keep the recovering Revy Lake at bay. Lead group across the line, and I reckon the danger man is going to be Max Cuthbert, isn't it? That grey and pink number 34 car into 6th position was quicker than the leaders, or quicker than the cars immediately ahead on that lap, even with the overtake and the little tangle with Bartle at Redgate Corner. When and where, though, does Jarrett Clark make the move? I'm amazed that he's been so gentle with Fred Green up until this point. Quite content to sit in the wheel tracks of the leader, but they're not getting away from the cars behind, so I think eventually that truce will come to an end. And as soon as they really start battling in front, then Cuthbert, who we just saw there in 6th place, could be the beneficiary. McLean's screeching of tyres as they hurl the cars through that quite steeply uphill right-hander, so you can carry a lot of speed through McLean's because gravity is on your side, slowing you down as you head through the apex. And again, kind of the same into Coppice, but then it plateaus at the top of the hill and very easy to drift wide into the gravel trap. Does an attack come this time from Jarrett Clark? Answer, no. Peaks to the inside, but more so that he could spot the braking point, I think, and settles back in behind Fred Green. They did put a bit of distance over Scott Lindblom that time in 3rd, so Lindblom not that close to Jarrett Clark as they head into the Melbourne hairpin. Is this where he makes the move? No, he's just sitting behind Fred Green, biding his time. This was the Rocco Coronel approach, wasn't it, in the first half of the year, particularly. Rocco, once he got into 2nd, was generally quite happy to stay there until roughly the 3/4 race distance, and that's normally when he'd make his move. Jarrett Clark is going to leave this a little bit later, it would seem. I'm convinced he will make a move. Yellow flag in the background, so something's gone on down at the Melbourne hairpin. I think the 21 car of Matthew Chihuahua, yes, there it is, saw him on the tracker recovering from a moment, and not sure if he jumped or was pushed, but either way, the car was briefly pointing the wrong way round. Through Redgate, Fred Green, I was about to say, continues to defend the race lead. He's not actually having to defend, is he? Matthew Chihuahua, meanwhile, this is what happened to him. Oh, gets into the back of the 95 car of Noah Young. That was all a bit clumsy, wasn't it? Got into the back of him and maybe jumped down at the throttle and lost the rear. No major harm done, although he has rejoined significantly behind the rest of the pack, and with less than 4 minutes to go now, the chances of him gaining much more ground appears to be quite slim. Right, when does this move come? It will come, I assure you. Jarrett Clark will not be content to finish 2nd. Jarrett Clark looking for a first podium in the championship. Well, he's on course for that, but I think if he had a choice between the 2nd step or the top step, he would definitely prefer to be in position number 1. So I get that he doesn't want to lose a podium when he's not had one yet this year, but I'm certain he will try and make a move for the lead. Does it come this time down the back straight? He's pushing Fred Green, who goes a little bit more defensive and then just drifts back over to the racing line when he realises that Clark isn't trying anything into the braking zone. Through the left, slightly neater line on the way in for Jarrett Clark, and he's quick on the exit. If he wanted to make a run at this into Melbourne, he could. And Fred Green thinks he might, and yes, Jarrett Clark now decides to go for it. He's up the inside, he's got 2 wheels on the grass, sideways. Does he get into the back of the race leader? No, somehow contact is avoided, but now it's go time. The lid has well and truly blown off the pressure cooker, and now it is going to be every driver for themselves. Fred Green hangs on to the lead. That is Cronin now, who's got himself ahead of Scott Lindblom, but he's on the outside line into Goddard's. We're on board with Lindblom now, and that is going to be Jarrett Clark squeezing Cronin wide, and that should benefit Lindblom as well. Yes, the Swedish driver gets back into 3rd place. Lewis Goff is the black car on the outside line, but look at that. To the outside goes Lindblom, and he's waving at Lewis, I think, to say that he's going to try and give him the slipstream. I'm not sure it's going to matter, though. No, there's no room on the line for Lewis Goff, and so he has to settle back in. So 2.25 minutes to go. 2 laps of the season remaining, and what has been a very, very tame race up until this point is now starting to burst into life. Jarrett Clark has dropped a few car lengths now to Fred Green, but I'm absolutely sure that the slipstream and a bit of assistance maybe from his teammate Scott Lindblom is probably going to bring them back together again. Out of the old hairpin, you can get a good look here at some of the long distance views that you can get as a spectator here at Donington Park. There's a reason that it's such a popular venue for spectators to come and enjoy a weekend's motor racing. Wherever you go around the track, you get a great view of the racing, and the Ginetta Juniors putting on a show here towards the end of the day, their final race of the season. They're all back together again, or at least the leading 3 are. Cronin under pressure here from Lewis Goff. I think Lewis could do with getting past Cronin. That way, if the leaders start battling, which inevitably they will, he will be the next one in line to pick up the pieces. Jarrett Clark, look at this, the different tactic this time. Pulls to the outside, gets the side draft, gets his nose ahead. He's on the outside line into the chicane, though. And Fred Green stands his ground, late on the brakes, carries the speed in. Does that mean Clark is quicker on the exit? Well, no, not really. So Fred Green, again, one of the most difficult drivers to overtake this weekend, hasn't he, in all 3 races, particularly the 2 today, and he is proving why. Hooks the inside line into the hairpin, Clark to the outside. Where does that leave Scott Lindblom? Well, he might get alongside his teammate on the exit of the turn, but Clark with the wider line had more momentum, and they end up single file again up the hill. Cronin and Goff back with them, and it's now Max Cuthbert in 6th who looks to try and close in a bit more. We've got one more lap to go then. 2.5 miles or so of racing remain in the 2025 Ginetta Junior season. Can Fred Green hang on to claim a 9th win of the year and a 2nd of the day? A little adjustment, I think, of the rear view mirror there. He moves to defend into Redgate, and this might leave him vulnerable to the switchback on corner exit, but no, parks it on the apex, loses speed in the middle of the corner, sacrifices speed in order to prevent that switchback from being possible. So Clark, that's one of his big opportunities gone. Where can he next try and make a move? The old hairpin is a risky place to make a pass, but he's close enough to think about it. Looks to the inside, but Fred Green had that covered as well. They both go in tight, and so Lindblom in third arguably will be the quickest of this group coming out of the turn. You ride on board with the Swede now as they head through Starkeys up towards Schwantz Curve. A bump draft there from Jarrett Clark to Fred Green, who again will defend the inside into McLean's. No one really wants to go to the outside. Cronin is the first to brave it, but then immediately ducks back in line to prevent Lewis Goff from getting through, and it's a bit of a stalemate again. Cronin spat out of line coming out of the corner. Not sure what that was all about. Is Goff alongside him? Sort of. Cuthbert's up the inside of Goff though, and those three are getting very touchy-feely out of Coppice corner. Down the exhibition straight, more contact. Cuthbert sideways. That opens the door for Harry Bartle now. So Cuthbert, who I think has knocked his windscreen wiper on in excitement, is going to lose a place rather than gain one. Jarrett Clark tried to get to the inside there of Fred Green into the chicane. It's all going to come down to the final two corners, as so often is the case. Jarrett Clark couldn't be any closer to Fred Green, but Fred Green couldn't really be any closer to the white line on the inside here into the Melbourne hairpin. Clark might as well try the outside. He's got very little to lose. He's late on the brakes. Fred Green will hang on again though on the inside. Bartle to the inside of Goff. They both run wide, and I think Max Cuthbert benefited from all of that. Is Fred Green going to do it? Has Jarrett Clark got one more lunge in him? He's going to look to the inside at Goddard. He's late on the brakes, but Fred Green gets across to the inside line, and I reckon is going to hang on now to claim that 9th victory of the year. Despite everything Jarrett Clark threw at him, it's a 9th win for Fred Green. It's a maiden podium for Jarrett Clark, and Scott Lindblom will complete the top 3 positions at the end of what was a fairly tense final race in the end for the Ginetta Junior Championship. There's still a bit more tension to be released further back maybe as this midfield pack exit the final turn. That is Noah Young getting 10th position away from Revy Lake right at the end. So Noah Young gaining some ground on the final lap, and there Matthew Chihuahua I think ended up getting back ahead of Vladislav Tomanchuk after his spin in the closing stages. Well, Fred Green, he might not have won the championship, but he will be, I think, pretty happy with the way that his weekend has gone, all things told. I think that his season has been a very impressive one. He's caught our attention for all the right reasons. Rocco Coronel's championship margin in the end, by the way, will be only 12 points over Fred Green, who, as I said, was already secured as the championship runner-up. He's also a 9-time race winner after his 2nd race win of the weekend. Jarrett Clark gets his first ever podium, and Scott Lindblom completes those podium places. Colin Cronin 4th ahead of Max Cuthbert, with Harry Bartle, Lewis Goff, Torrin Byrne, Ethan Carney and Noah Young to complete the top 10. Revy Lake and Josh Henry were next. Then it was Jesse Phillips, Henry Cameron, Andrew Robinson, Matthew Chihuahua and Vladislav Tomanchuk to complete the 17 finishers. The final race of the season for the Ginetta Juniors here at Donington Park started with more heartbreak for George Proudfoot-Nalder, who stalled off the line, rejoined at the back of the field, but sadly his race once again would end prematurely. It was a brilliant start though for pole sitter Fred Green, who was looking to add another victory to his already impressive tally. There was a moment at the chicane for Andrew Robinson on the first lap. He rejoined directly ahead of Noah Young. That created a stack up into the hairpin, where George Proudfoot-Nalder again found himself in trouble, made contact with Noah Young and Andrew Robinson, and George was out of the race. With his car in a dangerous position, the safety car was scrambled for a couple of laps, after which Fred Green really controlled the race. It was a very civilised middle portion of the race, with Jarrett Clark seemingly happy to work with Fred Green until the very closing stages. Max Cuthbert, though, was on a charge through the order from 10th on the grid. He had a bit of contact en route into 6th position ahead of Harry Bartle. There was some really good midfield battles. Revy Lake here tried to go around the outside of Josh Watts, who caught the curb at Coppice, and Revy ended up with 2, 3, nearly 4 wheels in the dirt. A really good save that could easily have ended in a spin. A bit like this one for Matthew Chihuahua, who got into the back of Noah Young's car at Melbourne and looped the 21 machine. In the closing stages, Jarrod Clark finally decided to have a go, and it nearly ended in disaster as he got squeezed onto the grass by the race leader Fred Green. That set about a brilliant final couple of laps of battling, at the end of which, though, it was Fred who came home to claim a 9th win of the year. Jarrod Clark got a debut podium.